moderate the independent candidates forum for Virginia here for our Senate District of 16, Mr. Waylin Ross. Give him a hand. Senate District 25, Mr. Elliott Harding. So what we hope to do today is to really engage the community, and there is 4 key points that these two gentlemen really feel they're running on, and they really feel like hit home for our community. But besides that, we also want this to be very informal, to the point where you guys can ask any question that you want, have any conversation with these gentlemen that you want. All right. But just to start off, to give a little more background, like I mentioned, Waylin with the 16th Senate District of Virginia, and Elliott with the 25th. That's kind of all we know so far, right? So I'm going to give these gentlemen the mic, just take a couple of minutes to get more of their background, of where they're from, who they are, and how they got started on this journey.
Hello, my name is Waylin Ross. Can you hear me good? My name is Waylin Ross. I was born and raised in Petersburg, Virginia. I was a hardhead in middle and high school, but I always knew I wanted to go to college. I did not know what I wanted to major in, but my favorite subject was history. Thinking, okay, I have to go to college, what am I going to major in, to actually have a job, making enough money to do what I want to do, which is basically, take over the world. But I decided I might give political science a shot. If I like history, I have to be interested in, if I'm going to learn about past leaders, then I should also be interested in current leaders, right? So I went off to Old Dominion University in 2008 after graduating Petersburg High School, and I majored in political science and got involved in a community service organization on campus. So after my first year, I actually spent time in Charlottesville. I completed a program at UVA called the Sorensen Institute for politics. So I actually remember, being here. It was too many years ago now, but I remember the streets passing. I was here for about 1 or 2 months during the summer of 2009. It's good to be back. Thank you for having me back. So I completed my education at Old Dominion University. Right after I finished my summer program here in Charlottesville, I interned 6 months later for Senator Yvonne B. Miller. Senator Miller was the first African-American female elected to the House of Delegates, and then the first African-American female elected to the Senate of Virginia. And I got really close to Senator Miller. Some may consider me to be her protege. She's an excellent person, but unfortunately she passed in 2012 when I was graduating. So when I graduated, a lot of people thought I was going to go on to work for Senator Miller, but when I graduated, she passed. I took a fellowship at the governor's office under Bob McDonald, who actually beat up on me. Right after my fellowship, I started as a legislative assistant in the General Assembly for my opponent that I'm running against now. He was my former boss. So I served as a legislative aide. I made my way to D.C., worked for a few lobbying firms, and went to George Mason, where I received my Master's of Public Policy. After I graduated from George Mason, I concentrated in economics at George Mason, and I taught at Northern Virginia Community College for about 3 years. I taught micro and macro economics, which was definitely an experience. Wasn't for me though. Wasn't for me. I never wanted to be a teacher. That's why I didn't major in history. But I did learn a lot, particularly the thought process of young people, getting engaged in their community and trying to gain an education so they can be successful in their life. And I think that really gave me some insight that I use when looking to represent, my community. Came back, the governor appointed me to the Board of Occupational and Professional Regulation, which is a policy board for setting the number of hours a barber has to study before they can get their licensing and other occupations in Virginia. I was appointed to a 4-year term by Governor Terry McCullough. We're going to get into that later. But I recently stepped down earlier this summer to run for state senate, so here I am. I am trying to be a champion in my community and push entrepreneurship and of course lower the crime rate, but I think we have to do all of that by, you know, giving economic empowerment to, you know, a community that has been and proven to be disenfranchised and stuck in a gerrymandered district. So now we have new opportunity available for my community, and I just want us to get all that we are owed out of that. So that's what I'm here running today, and I thank you for having me.
And for those that don't know as well, Waylin's 16th district is Richmond and Petersburg. Cities of Richmond and Petersburg, correct?
Richmond and Petersburg, parts of Richmond, all of Petersburg, all of Hopewell, and parts of Dinwiddie, Prince George, and Chesterfield.
And so next we have Mr. Elliott Harding, whose 25th district is Charlottesville and Albemarle.
Awesome, thanks. And I want to thank Waylin for coming up here right now. Before I jump in, let me tell you, I reached out to Waylin, I guess, maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago. I've been paying attention to his race because we're both 29 years old, we're both running as independents. We're both the only competition to kind of entrenched establishment Democrat folks. And so I was paying attention to his race, and for a while I thought the party apparatus wasn't necessarily going to jump into his race. I thought that they were going to let him have a fair shot given his record with Senator Miller. And, you know, having worked in the General Assembly, I thought they were going to kind of favor Waylin because the Democrat nominee's got somewhat of a sully past down in Richmond. And so I was disappointed to see that the Democratic Party was going to clear $125,000 of his campaign debt, his opponent's campaign debt, in order to make sure that he won. And so when I saw that, I was really disheartened, and I've been paying attention to his platform and the things he's running on, and I saw it touched a lot of the things I'm running on here in the 25th district, and I thought, you know what, let's band together and let's kind of try to elevate that voice. So I really appreciate you coming up here today and making the ride. I know that Petersburg and Charlottesville are very different, but they got a lot of similar talking points right now too. So thanks for coming up. As far as I'm concerned, I'll be quick. I'm born and raised here in Charlottesville and Albemarle. Been here my whole life. I went to high school here. I went to the University of Virginia for undergrad. I got cousins here, family here, parents here. Everybody's here, and I love this area. I tell people, win or lose, I'm not going anywhere. I've lived in this district all my life, 80% of the district all my life. You know, we got Nelson County in it. I went to law school down in Washington and Lee and Lexington, so all of Rockbridge County is in it. And then there are several other counties. There's Bath, Highland, and Allegheny as well. And I've got a lot of family in those areas too. So in the places I haven't touched, I've got a lot of perspective on it. And it's very important to me. But I think that I take a lot of pride in it because it's the birthplace of American independence. You know, and America's got a very long and detailed history, but we're always trying to move in the best direction for independence. And that's something that I've been passionate about since a kid. You know, Waylin mentioned he was a history buff. It's hard not to be a history buff in Virginia because we got so much of it, you know. And so with that, I think we've kind of got at a standstill in Virginia. I think the two-party apparatus needs to be broken up. I think that it's pit people against each other in ways that our best interests aren't being pursued. And my whole platform, people ask me what's my platform, I mention all those counties in the city. It's so diverse. What happens in Charlottesville is totally different than Highland County or Allegheny County. But the things I'm most passionate about are criminal justice reform, number one. That's what I do for a living. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I've had family go through the system. I've had family in law enforcement. I've kind of seen it all. And I think it's the place where people lose their voice the most. Whether you actually lose your vote, you lose your liberties, but you know, the parent of a defendant loses a little bit of time. They're anxious. They lose those resources. A child who loses their father or their mother and the time with them loses maybe a two-income household or a strong parental relationship or time. And then, of course, a community can lose, you know, an institutional person or somebody that could be a breadwinner or somebody could be some type of positive figure. And so criminal justice is my number one issue, but also empowering folks to be able to work for themselves. And that's one thing we were talking about earlier today. I want to see skills put back into our schools. I am running on the idea, I think it should be mandatory to graduate from high school with some type of Class C license or an occupational license of some sort. Because at a minimum, it can't hurt to know these things. If I have to know a language or I have to go to an art class, I think we should have to come out being able to earn money with my hands and my mind rather than having to go out and get a 4-year degree. Now, it's not to say 4-year degree isn't valuable. I wouldn't be where I am without one. You probably wouldn't be where you are without one. But there are a lot of folks who, are stuck either pursuing that path and getting a bunch of student loan debt and not getting a job that needed a degree, or they pursue something that they don't have the skills. So I think skills are very important, and we got some folks here in the room, I know, who just started their own HVAC company. And we were saying earlier, this isn't just about us. We want to hear y'all's perspective too. So skills, criminal justice reform, education reform. I think the SOLs have kind of ruled the curriculum here in Virginia. We've gotten incrementally more standardized. So it really discourages critical thinking. It becomes a series of fact-based tests, not always the most fair tests. Disproportionately, the results don't necessarily favor folks that might have a different learning style or behavioral issues or family issues, or they want to go somewhere else and specialize in different curriculum or something like that. I think we should have more choice and more autonomy in the system, not just public to private, but it could be charters, it could be public to public. You might want to go to another public school in the area, things like that. I think that our education system needs to be reformed. And then we were talking about business development. I know we're going to get back here too, but I think Virginia and Washington, D.C., but Virginia, if you look at the top donors to both parties, 4 of the top 5 are donating to the same 2 parties. Dominion is the top donor to both parties, and after that, you get into the beer and wine wholesale companies who run the ABC, you get into Altria, you get into these different companies that are running the system, because they don't like competition necessarily, and they want to be able to favor themselves over maybe upstarts and startups and small businesses and entrepreneurship. And so what I want to see is a more free market system so that folks can start their own business and they can grow and they can expand, particularly in areas where they haven't had the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Good round of applause, please. It's definitely good to know where you stand, right? So now we're gonna dig into a few topics, and then, like I said, we will have time for Q&A as well. But the first topic that I want the candidates to touch on is minority business growth. Minority business growth. And I was sharing with Waylin, I'm not as well versed on the statistics in Richmond and Petersburg, but I know we have some similarities and some differences. But as far as Charlottesville, we comes to business growth, we hover around a 3% unemployment rate, kind of fluctuates around that. Of course, as we know, the majority, 70-some%, are those of are white Caucasian. And then next, it drops all the way down to around 18% for black. And so then, down from there, Asian, Hispanic. So part of what happens with businesses, gentlemen, is that a lot of people will look at these areas and what's called black flight may happen. When we talk about minority business growth, people think they need to go to a larger market to make it. Or we have things here like the Chamber of Business Diversity Council, Black Professional Network, New Hill Development. We have the Charlottesville fund as well that had some project that helped build up minority businesses. So my question to you then is, why would those loans from the city and those special interest groups for minorities be needed, and what are your plans to help put minority businesses on an even playing field?
I think it's definitely needed because it's hard to talk about these issues in islands, really, because they tie into one another. But when you have decades and decades of discrimination in our criminal justice system, it's pretty easy to point to why you have 18% unemployment among African Americans and 3%, which is basically no unemployment, because it's a natural unemployment, we call it, when I was teaching. So it's not really hard to understand the disparity between the two. But I think that the way to even a playing field is businesses itself, and that's why we need important organizations that cater strictly to minority businesses, so they can even out the playing field. You know, loans, money, grants. I like money that I don't have to pay back. So let's talk about grants. We need, you know, minority businesses need grants. We need resources given to us because that's action opposite of what happened in the past, which was resources taken from us, right? So why should we have to borrow money now when, you know, they didn't borrow labor during slavery? So I think that we actually should put money and resources, give them to minority businesses, but it does not have to be in the form of a check necessarily. It can be event space, it can be business space, it can be computers and conference rooms, it can be somewhere for you to meet your clientele and for you to present your business as being, you know, more credible, so that sale can be easier to complete. I think that's what minority businesses need. We don't really need handouts either. What we really need is just basic resources that other, I guess, majority businesses, is that the opposite of minority businesses? I don't know. But other businesses can enjoy that they actually naturally get with the system that we are working in. So I think those organizations are needed because we need dedicated resources to minority businesses so that they can properly compete with even small businesses. You know, minority businesses are on an uneven playing field with small businesses, just as small businesses are on an uneven playing field with big corporations.
So if I may, let me ask just a clarification point. So if a business owner goes for a business loan, then are you saying a black business, like there should be some sort of subsidy or something that granted because it's a black business, or do they apply for a loan the same way their white counterpart applies for a loan?
Well, I really didn't separate my business plan between white and black necessarily. I represent Petersburg, and we all have the same problems, whether white or black. We're about maybe 75% black. So, of course, the issues that occur in Petersburg disproportionately affect our black population there. But no, I wouldn't necessarily say like it should be any type of affirmative action type of policy where if you are black and own a business, you automatically get money. I think that we should give the resources out evenly to everybody and have the same qualifications and requirements of everyone. But if you properly set the qualifications and requirements up in the way that it would be most helpful to minority businesses, but it can still be, you know, utilized by all businesses. But, you know, why would a business who can afford office space go utilize a co-working space when they can afford their own office space? But not to say that they're not allowed in the co-working space, but they wouldn't really have much of a need, so we can avail that space to more minority businesses.
And Elliott, minority business growth, how are you going to tackle it?
So there are a lot of ways to go about it. One thing we were talking about earlier, and I'm just going to start again with the skill component, because what you saw in the history of the United States was for a very long time, you know, and Waylon hadn't touched on, but I know he's going to, because even though he's an independent, he considers himself, you know, almost like a reincarnate of the readjuster party. He's a readjuster. That's what you would call yourself, right? And it was based out of Petersburg and grew out of Petersburg. And I'll let you get into more of that later, but with that came the most rapid amount of marginal gain and success in the history of the United States for, at the time, free black folks down in Petersburg, but also Virginia generally.
And a little bit after the Civil War, so
yeah.
Supposedly everybody.
Yeah, right. And so with that, though, you saw a lot of skilled folks who now had franchises. You know, they were free. And so with that, you had folks that were engineers and carpenters and you know, iron workers, a skilled workforce, and it was in dire need because the country was building. So with that, you have autonomy. So I'm an attorney. I have a professional certification. I can go out, and I did last year, started my own firm. If you go out and you're a carpenter, you're a contractor, once you become a general contractor, you can start your own business. It's a sense of autonomy and independence, the same way with HVAC. You know, you can go do your own thing, coding, things of that nature. But if you're just relegated to some liberal arts degree, you're at the disposal of some larger corporate structure. And with that, I think no matter who, and this isn't just minority businesses, this is just people in general. Independence needs to be instilled in all people, a sense of career autonomy. That's why I was talking about earlier, skills going on the jobs. Right now there's a stigma, but if everybody has to get one before they graduate, there's no longer a stigma about going to vocational school because everybody had to do it. So that's one. Two, you know, you're talking about the criminal justice system. I'm a proponent of banning the box. I think that, you know, it's been done at the state level. I think it needs to be done in the private sector. And this actually runs a little counterintuitive to like these free market principles. Some people would say, oh, Elliott, you're free market, you're libertarian. How do you let the private company ask whatever questions they want? What they don't realize is the box is a state-created construct. If you criminalize people's activity, just because they violate a law, the state created that law. Now, some people say, well, murder's always been a crime, robbery's always been a crime. Yeah, but what about these regulatory crimes? Like, you know, you didn't go out and get your license updated enough to play your driving on it. That doesn't inherently hurt anybody. You know, you didn't get in a car accident, you didn't go speeding, but you didn't do some regulation thing, and now you're in the system, right? These things are keeping people from getting hired. I think we should automatically expunge people's records when they're found not guilty. You know, it still shows up on a record that you were charged in the first place. I think that you're talking about occupational licensing and not just banning the box, but there's also certain licenses you can't get if you're convicted of certain crimes. I think that the state needs to reassess that. So those are things that disproportionately impact the minority community. And then at the end of the day, folks in minority communities who make money have easier routes of lending to other folks who want to build businesses in the minority community. Rather than having to jump through the proverbial hoops that have always been there for creditors, like banks, there's high regulations to lend money out there. And lending money doesn't just mean you're going to get an interest payment. Very often they have a vested interest in seeing your business grow. So if 5 local business people in the minority community are succeeding, and somebody like Julian comes up with a juice company, he's like, hey, I need a loan, right? They're going to want to see the business plan, they're going to want to lend the money, they're going to want to help you out, and somebody will say, well, they can already do that. But at a certain point, depending on the threshold of money or the scope of the account, they can't do that. You got to get securities, you got to get all these different licenses and regs. Those need to be reduced so that I think lending and growth can happen in the minority community at a faster rate.
And one point I would want you to go a little more in depth on is as far as when we look at the free market or if we look at parties who may over-regulate. When it comes to business groups, like what can be done about minorities being denied loans or not being approved for the most? Because on one side we say, well, I need more regulation for that. On the free market side, they'll say, like who's policing on the free market side? So what can we do about minority business loans being denied or not being looked at with the same qualification?
Right. You know, in that regard, you see the government, it's not totally free market. Federal government effectively runs everything. You've got the Fed, you've got the FDIC insured component, they've got to jump through a lot of hoops. The government is fully vested and involved in the 7 largest banks. 7 largest banks pretty much have all the wealth as far as public lending is concerned. We need to have fair practices in the sense that I would love to see just blind applications. Meaning, you know, you see it in hiring practices where people discriminate based on name, based on other things. That's actually one negative ramification for banning the box. Some people don't know, but I'm still in favor of banning the box, and I'm digressing. But they say if you ban the box idea, people just start discriminating based on stereotypes, other stereotypes, and then it's actually broader than people think. Same thing goes with hiring practices based on, you know, more cultural or ethnically based names rather than some traditional, just like John Smith or something like that. You know, you find more ethnic sounding names or foreign sounding names. That discrimination happens. That also happens in credit applications. And I think to your point, this is probably more of a federal thing, but I would love to consider pursuing ways to go about it the state way, which is blinding it out so that people are being looked at on their merits. You know, what is it you're trying to start? What is it you're trying to do? But I think we're over-relying on the public banking sector, the 7 banks, I can name them all, but I think we're over-relying on that. I think private equity, I think it needs to come from the bottom up. And that's why I was saying I think we need to support businesses lending to other businesses, because then you have a vested community interest in folks at Royalty Eats going down to the barber shop at the end of the strip and then going to this gas station. That way people are building on the way up rather than relying on New York City money or Washington, D.C.
I agree, and it's funny because if you look at just what we've been talking about for the last 10 to 15 minutes about the problems that we face as a community, it's in our hiring practices, right? Man in the box and or even lending practices to fund a small business. But I think that we can bypass these problems because they're really secondary if we push more of our own community members to start their own businesses. Because once they start their own businesses, it might be a micro business for the first 5 years or whatnot, 5 or 10 years. But eventually you're going to reach a threshold where you start to hire your own workforce. And once you start to hire your own workforce, you might naturally understand, the job candidates that come in your door might have the same issues that you face in your community because he's from that same community. So we would not have to regulate current companies, existing companies, to change their hiring practices if we encourage new employers, new people to become employers. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Haran Kakilan. I am new to Charlottesville. This is my first official event as anything other than a mother here. So, thank you. I am originally from Baltimore. I've lived for the last 10 years in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I have worked and lived all over the country. So my question is about me. It's all about me right now. I am a woman. I am Black. I am an entrepreneur. I am a mother. I'm a grandmother. I have a lot of things going on. But I've always been a business owner. I want to know from you why I'm here. First of all, I'm here because I'm supporting my daughter in her own promotion. She's moving forward in her career. I'm here to support her in doing that. Yay, awesome.
Here in the city of Charlottesville.
Here in the city of Charlottesville. There's literally a blank slate for me. My question is, why should I move my business to Charlottesville? And why should I consider this a place for me and my family as a permanent home? What can you do for me as a multiple threat? I'm a woman, I'm Black, I'm an entrepreneur, I am a disabled veteran, I'm a decorated veteran. I want to know what you got here for me.
Let's give a round of applause for one of our veterans. And of course, being a strong Black woman, of course.
Well, I know Elliott's going to take this, but I'm going to plug in since you're here. Come down to Petersburg, once in a while. It's a great place, and you probably love it.
And maybe I missed it. What type of business do you have? Because, I mean, it might not matter to the answer, but it's somewhat relevant as far as moving into the city.
Well, it might frighten you.
No, it doesn't frighten me. I'm pro any business.
I'm a journalist by trade. I'm an investigative journalist.
Okay.
But I also...
Well, then you definitely need to come to Charlottesville. No, I mean, just for the market. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
and I know that you were describing your...
There are no brown people on the news.
Well, I know.
None.
Well, not just that, they're also not prosecuting people. I've tried to encourage getting minority prosecutors in both the county and the city. I'm a defense attorney, and most of the time when people become judges, they're usually coming from the prosecution side.
Right.
If you want to see more minorities on the bench, you got to get minorities into the system. If you be at law school right here, there's no reason why we're not feeding in at least the summer associate every year. So, with that being said, though, for what you do, outside of the journalist component and how this is kind of a hotbed that something should be investigated, ultimately, I would say, You know, this is an environment that has a lot of resources. You've obviously got the university, which can help promote, and you serve as a platform for a lot of things. If you kind of break into that area and reach out to folks. We don't have a journalism school, but in the future,
Really?
we do not.
I did not know that.
But it's actually something that people have talked about for a very long time, given that Katie Kirk is one of the graduates, and we've got a lot of folks that major in other things but go into that space. Over time, I think it's something that we very well may see here. But I'll note that we're close to DC, we're close to Richmond, we're here in Charlottesville, and we have a disproportionate amount of high-profile issues that kind of come out of the area. But I think that we live in a time over the past 2 to 3 years where being a minority in the area is something that any disproportionate impacting issue is now being elevated, hopefully, a little bit more. You see things like the law enforcement, the civilian review board is now something that's being discussed. That wasn't happening 10 years ago. But here we are 3 years later, 3 years ago it starts being talked about, now they finally got bylaws on the way. We've got minority representatives, in fact black women in several positions of power, whether it be the mayor, the superintendent, the chief of police. In the sense that we have a highest amount of minority representation in government for a very long time. So I think there are a lot of opportunities, whether it be for you or your daughter or your family, to enter into the community and enter into that communal conversation. And you're bringing a perspective from the South. You said you're in Charlotte, but before that you said you're in Baltimore. So these are like regional.
And Texas.
Oh, Texas is.
And the Midwest.
Okay, yeah.
I've been all over. My question is about the efficacy. What is the benefit of someone like me who has a vast experience but no ties to come to a place like Charlottesville and to invest my business in a place like Charlottesville?
Well, I'm going to piggyback off of something Charles was mentioning earlier. I do think our Chamber of Commerce is doing its best to, as of late, try to promote minority business growth and bring people that might not even be from here but just moved here and want to start something, to give them a platform to be a springboard. I also think that you've got a lot of folks with roots already here who are looking to help and grow and promote, cross-promote in the minority business space. So you very well, and it doesn't have to be minority business owners, you've got plenty of white business owners that also want to help in that space. And what it is that you do, I think this area has a lot of passion and dedication to journalism. So I think that you would definitely find a home as far as a journalist community that we want to welcome you here as well.
I don't know about you, but I just had an opportunity for your business. There's no journalism school. You get on campus and start a club, and then that's just free labor.
Thank you. So to keep it moving, since we actually started getting into the criminal justice reform, I'm going to go into that question. I know that's a hot topic as well. Some of these two are passionate about. So when it comes to criminal justice reform, for this area, blacks are over half of those that the city accounted for as being arrested, and 5 times more likely to be pulled over or profiled in some sort of way. And that stat's coming from our city's police department. All right, so we know there's an issue. I know that the Waylin has been outspoken. I think both these gentlemen have been outspoken about the benefits of the legalization of marijuana, for instance. So to you gentlemen, what do you feel is the root of our disparities with our criminal justice? And what reform do you feel is needed and that you would want to see legislation, you would present legislation to be passed?
Elliott, coming from this attorney, can speak more towards this as far as this disparities actually in the criminal justice system. I really just think that we need to find ways to prevent our community members from entering the criminal justice system, and that is by way of getting a proper education. Education is a great equalizer. Owning a business, of course, you want to stay out of trouble, so you have to stay out of jail so you can make your money, right? Unless you plan on going inside the jail, which I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I think prevention and then reentry is very important. Elliott can speak to the things that actually go on inside the system and the courtroom and things like that. But while we're in the community, we need to prevent people going to get arrested in the first place. And if they do so happen to get caught up in the criminal justice system, we have to give them resources to be properly acclimated back into society so they won't be pushed towards that activity again and make them there. Also, like you said, we have to watch what we criminalize. We can't criminalize activity that is habitual to a population like marijuana. And we can't criminalize them and then go round up everybody who already have that habit, right? That's basically unfair. So that goes to who are the prosecutors, who are the lawmakers. That's why we need to elect more people like me and Elliott. So we have a different understanding than the 70, 80-year-old, mostly white, maybe some black, maybe some different nationalities, legislators who really find it harder to relate to the things that we experience in our community. I think that to really tackle criminal justice reform, we need to tackle the problems around, why are we disproportionately sending black people, black young males particularly, to jail for doing the same type of activities as everyone else, their counterparts.
This touches on my lip. Earlier yesterday, I spent half an hour over in one of the local jails talking to a 19-year-old client who's facing felonies, and the guy in the car was a client I represented who had already been deemed a felon prior to that, and both 19. And I'm thinking to myself, you're in the system now at 19, you don't get out of that. It's tough to break out of that system. And there are a lot of things historically that have led to where we are today. You're talking about the statistics. Crime happens regardless of race, regardless of location. It's just a matter of what type of crime is it most likely to get caught. And so you can find very high poverty rates in places like Hazard, Kentucky that are extremely white areas, but the crime rates are through the roof due to drugs, violence, things like that. Poverty begets certain crimes of addiction, opportunity, gangs, and certain things like that, where it sets in and then it leads to higher rates of violence, and then violent crimes are more likely to get caught. What happens with that is you get over policing. When you get over policing, you get stereotyping, and you're getting driving while black. You're getting the DWBs, you're getting the stops and frisks, and even though it just looks suspicious. And what always gets me is the odor of marijuana. The odor of marijuana has gotten into more people's backpacks, trunks of their cars, their passengers' back purses than anything else, because you can follow the odor of marijuana into any nook and cranny of your car if you're the police officer. So the day that gets legalized, you've now taken off one of the #1 ways of investigation. Now, I'll also note that, Michelle Alexander has a great book called The New Jim Crow. There are plenty of books about how we got to where we are. This isn't something that happened last decade. It didn't just happen in the 80s. It didn't just happen in the 60s. It's been going on since the history of the United States. There was a time when here in Virginia, and I've already committed, the first bill I introduced was to get rid of the death penalty. There was a time in Virginia where there were 80 capital punishable crimes for a young black man, but only 2 for a white man. So, and that was in the 1700s, right? So the fact is this disproportional thing has been going on since dawn. As far as local issues, there are things that, as long as our police force can be more aware, they can be trained. I would love to see people encouraged to actually enter into law enforcement. So from the community, I would like to see our law enforcement be able to get a stipend to live in the community, so their kids grow up together, they see each other, they know each other, rather than being strangers. Because when you're strangers, you start applying misconceptions about people, and then it can lead to higher and higher statistical issues. A lot of our law enforcement lives out in Savannah or Louisa or Greene, and they say it's due to cost of living, but when you're recruiting from those areas, they might not you don't know your neighbor, you don't know what's going on, you don't know who lives, 3 blocks down. You start getting strangers policing aggressive laws aggressively, and then you end up with a system where you don't have adequate representation. I can talk about criminal justice reform all day, but you specifically were talking about these numbers. I know that.
I think this is more of a statement, I think this is what I'm calling I think this is more of a statement than it is a question. One of the things we have to understand as a whole is competency. Just understanding color, I don't care what color, understanding law itself. So the current book, the law book, so I work in the criminal justice and I've been crime. So I left criminal justice just because I learned enough about the criminal justice system to understand that I probably didn't really understand on the other side because of what I understood. All right, so our current criminal justice book dates back, the code book is 1950. So when you, in terms of talking about legal searches and things like that, your biggest obstacle is changing the law on the book. It's not making a big issue once something has occurred, because the book is already written. When a judge, a lawyer, they're going to refer to the book of law for the state of Virginia, for the state of California. Now, many other states like Colorado who have changed their marijuana laws. If you look on their book, they had a law like everybody else that marijuana was illegal, but we changed the book. In terms of how you change that, it's very important that we understand when you are putting people in position of power, such as Elliott or yourself, you need to be dedicated to understanding that I need you to change this on the book. I don't need you to go and do a big ado about, well, they're doing this, they're doing that. Well, they can do that because it's on the book. And so discretionary, that becomes discretion to the officer and the situation. So it doesn't become about what is actual. What's actual is we need to change the law. So you want individuals to understand that this was on the book, 1950. The book goes back to 1950. They amend certain things. Most people would like to think that our driver's license law or the driver's license amendment, because it's not a law, the driver's license amendment to get people to get their license back is now law. That could change again back in July 1 if they take that amendment off the book. That's not a law, that's just an amendment. You understand? So I think competency is a big thing that we need to hold individuals accountable for when we are talking about who we're going to elect, what we're talking about. It's good. I see Charlottesville has been big on, and a lot of the stuff we've dealt with has been robbery. It has no substance. One of the things I knew prior to the statute was you can't change that because that's a state law. It's not a local law, so you can't go and say we're going to move it because the state put it there. So you got to go and get your individual be sent to the Senate, to the House, and say, the first thing I want you to do, if I'm going to support you, is you need to go to them. It's your responsibility because it came from them, for you to go to be on the floor and say, my community would like these statutes in the community moved. What can we do about it? So I think competency in all individuals is understanding. And too often, color becomes a barrier, minority, that's okay. But if we start changing what's on the book, some of that stuff is going to subside because marijuana is off the books now. So if you do smell like marijuana, well, it's not, we got it off the book, so it doesn't impact.
Gosh, yeah, that was one of the things Elliott was saying. So, but gentlemen, as far as, I'll get to you as well, but as far as, expounding on that, some methods that you all would take in order to, to introduce a bill and get that passed, what are some of the methods you would do to change the bill?
So you're asking, you said the word method. You're not asking which laws I would change. You're asking how I would leverage my position to be able to get it done. I'll give you a few that off the top I would do. We were talking about marijuana, obviously. I was talking about expunging the not guilty funding. I think that you should automatically get your voter rights back once you're released. I think that something as big as the death penalty should be gone. But I also think nonviolent felons should be able to get their gun rights back right away. Because if you look at when those laws were put in 1961, violent felons had lost their gun rights for 50 years prior to that. Nobody had a problem with that. 1961, the same year Strom Thurmond's put into stars and bars up and down in South Carolina. They're taking guns away from nonviolent felons. It's a fundamental liberty to be able to protect yourself. And if you're in a community that might be disproportionately lower means, which has disproportionately higher violent crime rates, the law-abiding citizens or nonviolent citizens need to be able to protect themselves. I don't care if you bounce a bad check. You need to be able to defend your kids in your house. Yet, when you put guns in these areas, you now create an entire new class of felon with 5-year mandatory minimums for no reason other than the fact that they might want to defend themselves. But because they bounced a bad check over $200, they got grand larceny charged, and next thing you know, they can't defend their wife and kids in a neighborhood that might be crime-ridden. That's the type of law I would take off the books, change the book. I would love to change the book. That's the #1 way to go about it. Now, as far as the means of doing it, I'm running as an independent. Waylin's running as an independent. We live at a very vital time right now in the General Assembly. There are 21 Republicans, 19 Democrats, okay? If either of us wins, we're probably going to be looking at a 20, 19, and 1, or it could be 19, 19, and 2 if we both win, right? As far as who's over here, who's in this third block. You can now leverage. Now we're going to catch hell from both parties. They're going to treat us like dogs until they need our vote, on something. And that's when we sit down and we come to the table and we say, cool, all right, I know you didn't put me on any of the committees I wanted to be on, and I know that you're not giving me any of the money that I need to get reelected. I took that burden, but you need me to vote for X. I'm going to come at you with Y, and here are 5 listed demands. These are 5 laws that need to come off the books. And we leverage our position outside of the party to both parties to say, y'all need to figure it out. Meanwhile, we can build coalitions. I know Republicans that want to do a lot of these things, and I know Democrats that want to do the same things, but they don't feel like they can work together. We, as independents, can be that intermediary to say, look, Sally Hudson wants to do this, and Todd Gilbert up in Shenandoah wants to do this. They would never publicly say that, but now with an independent in the middle, they might be able to join us together.
I agree. It's all about leveraging. I can tell you, I don't want to say too much to get the election, but I'm ready to say it. Nobody can count on me for any vote until we legalize marijuana. That will be the first thing that I want to vote to pass. If we're not going to do that the first year, then I'm not going to be reliable for any vote. I don't care if you're giving your grandmother, a